Welcome to the Future of SMF, the podcast where senior leaders in compliance, risk, financial crime and data protection share the strategies, stories and insights that got them to the top. I'm your host, Chris Bryant, founder of STJ Consultancy Solutions, your trusted partner in financial services consultancy and recruitment. In each episode, I'll bring you exclusive conversations with respected leaders in their field, sharing how they got to where they are and how you can too. From landing senior management roles to tackling career-defining challenges, we're here to break down what it really takes to build a high-impact career and scale your future. Right, let's dive into today's episode. Hey everybody, we're back delving deep into the universe of senior compliance. Today we're thrilled to have a very special guest on the show. We've got Kash Baig with us. Kash is a Chief Compliance Officer for a large American investment firm. He's an industry-renowned mentor, a guest speaker at countless industry events, a self-confessed Star Wars nerd, and a leader who's navigated the complex constellations of compliance to reach the zenith of his career. So welcome to the show, Kash.
Thank you for having me. Great intro, by the way.
It's great to have you on. We've obviously seen quite a lot about you in social circles and various events and stuff, so it's great to actually talk to you properly. We can fire straight off. So maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
So I am a compliance nerd working in the personal wealth and investment space, covering brokerage largely now. Historically, I've done a bit of AML. I've done technology compliance, whatever that is, a bit of operational compliance, private wealth. Odds and sods, basically. I've been collecting different bits of the compliance universe into what's called my repertoire, allegedly, mixing it all together, throwing in a bit of Google, now using a bit of AI, trying to make myself sound coherent and competent in equal measure, bit by bit, hoping that I come across as generally semi-sensible in my feedback, advice, etc., etc. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. Compliance nerd, covering, 10, 12 years, whatever it is now, altogether.
Well, you've been around quite a bit in various circles, right? So you must be doing something right.
Yeah, people still seem to tolerate me, so that's good. It's helpful. It keeps the bills paid and the children fed, so that's a good starting point.
Excellent. So what would you say are the most challenging aspects of your job and how do you manage them?
So, I made a joke when I started thinking about this to myself that the most challenging bit and the best bit is people. People are just, that life generally, there's 8 billion odd people and we come in all different colours, shapes, sizes, personalities. We all have our quirks. I'm quirky in many ways. People I deal with are also quirky. I'm a huge fan of Myers-Briggs, and when I meet people, I'm like, hey, let's do this fun test. And it is fun, but I'm largely doing it so I can figure out what kind of personality they are. And then I try and find a Star Wars character to fit them into. I'm like, okay. And if you're a Vader Sith Lord type, I'm like, yeah, probably not my kind of people. But if you're an Ewok or Chewbacca or a Han Solo, we're going to get on. We're going to be all right. We want to be in the light and the good guys. So
too many clones out there too, right?
Yeah, a lot of that too. So, yeah, people are the interesting bit. I think if you get the people bit right, the rest of the stuff you kind of figure out. I am half joking, by the way. I think the other side of that is regulation is ever evolving. So we're in this universe of confusion. You always hear the phrase, get comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think that's the thing with regulation, compliance, and lots of folks I know with previous legal careers who've shifted across to, is it legally the right thing to do versus does it feel right, does it smell right, let's talk more. And then it's everybody's personality, right, in terms of what they think, what their experiences are, how adamant they are that they are the smartest person in the room and nobody else knows what the right answer is and they must be adhered to, etc., listened to.
And then balancing that with aspirations and desires that for the firm you're working with too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Egos, that's the other bit. Balancing people's egos and need to be correct. Yeah, people's the interesting bit. If you get the people bit, the rest kind of falls into place.
Absolutely. So, well, it's backpedal a little bit, right? So, everybody's got their origin story. So, what did you want to be when you were younger, when you wanted to grow up?
This is really interesting. I've really thought about this. So I think my grandfather, my father's father, back in the day, I learned we did a family tree thing, origin stories of our elders. What did they do? They were migrants. My grandfather left Pakistan. It was possibly India then when he left. They were fishermen. They were in Uganda. They were the Ugandan Indians that, Idi Amin then said, "Hey, I don't want you folks here anymore, bounce." So then they called the king and queen. I think it would have been the queen at that point. And allegedly she said, "Yeah, come over, come and help build Britain." So then he came to the UK. I wish he'd chosen southern Spain. It's warmer. They have siestas. Anyway, he chose the UK. So he came here to build a better life. He was a fisherman by his history. When I was growing up, I liked the idea of living on a beach and catching fish and reading books until, I don't know, the sun goes down. But obviously that's, not reality, for me anyway. I then thought about art. I was into art. I liked writing. I was always into poetry. I was always into storytelling, story writing, extrovert storyteller as a kid. I thought I'd be a great writer of some form. I still write a little bit, just for myself, amusement. My daughter does it, so it's a DNA thing. And I also thought about architecture when I was younger. Then obviously as I got older, I was around friends who were all into various different sports. I was into sports, and I discovered there's something called sports science. So I was like, I'm going to go and be a sports scientist, and I'm going to somehow get into football through sports science, and I'm going to be sports and shorts, and probably end up fishing on a beach and reading books, that kind of thing. Anyway, all of that didn't work out. I went traveling, came back. I did do some fishing while I was traveling. That was amazing when I was like 21, 22, and then decided I needed to do something with my life. At the time, some of my more sensible friends had become lawyers, doctors, that kind of grown-up type thing. You need a profession, you need a job. So I went eventually into criminal law, met a beautiful woman who was at law school herself, and I guess she had high standards and she didn't want to marry a fisherman. So I went back to law school, did lots of studies, and slowly but surely, post-Lehman's, ended up in regulation and compliance, etc., etc. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Well, that's quite a jump from fisherman to compliance, right?
Yeah, but now I'm fishing people to, help them, and I'm not quite feeding them loaves and fish, but I'm, trying to do my bit in terms of their compliance journey. So I'm kind of still fishing. I'm looking for them and trying to help them and feed them and, give them clothes and all the rest of it. So kind of there's a link-ish.
Trying to help the little fish.
My hippie link, yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, teach a man to fish. I like that. We'll go with that.
So, could you maybe share a memory from your early career, perhaps something that's, maybe a surprisingly challenging scenario, or maybe even something funny?
I'll give you challenging. So I'd never really worked in offices. So when I went into criminal law, I was working as an agent. So like you work for yourself as a consultant, and I was doing, the antisocial hours of what in the US called public defending, and here we call them police station reps. So people get drunk, they get into a fight, they end up Thursday, Friday, Saturday night in a police cell somewhere, and then the duty solicitor, as it's called here, goes out and deals with all the mess. So I was an agent for those guys. So the guys who didn't want to go out would sub it out to me. So I'd never worked in an office. When I then was transitioning over into compliance, and obviously you then start working in an office, I remember my wife saying to me, be careful of office politics. And I had no idea what she meant. I was like, what do you mean? I am the most interesting person in the world, obviously. Everyone's going to love me, my banter, my quirks, it's going to be great. And then the first 3 or 4 jobs I had, for some reason, I ended up always being the guy that didn't quite fit. So, one job after another job after another job. So there's a range of awkward scenarios where, you're not the guy we're after, you're not the droid we're looking for type scenario. And then that job ends, and then another job ends, and by the time you get to the 3rd or 4th, you're like, do I tell the wife that I've just lost another job? can I think of a better story? And I'm like, yeah, I just wasn't feeling it. And it's like, when you got a family to feed, you can't come home and say I just wasn't feeling it. So it was just easier to tell the truth. And then you get that look of despair and rolling eyes of, really? And I always remember her saying, how is this man ever gonna, get a job and consistently stay stable? Like, there were definitely those moments of, this guy's just not meant to be in an office. Go back to the fishing and the shorts and the beach and the, reading books. It's like, how do you find a job that lets you do all of that and be corporate? And the answer is, it's very, very difficult. So that was my learning phase of adapting to a corporate scenario, situation, whatever you want to call it, environment. It took time. It took me years. And I'm trying to now, that's one of the reasons I help people, to help them adapt early. Don't be me. It took me a long time. I made lots of mistakes. I made jokes at the wrong time. I made jokes with the wrong people. I may have offended people at times, or I was being quirky when I shouldn't have been quirky, or I was storytelling when I should have been listening, or I wasn't listening, or when I was listening to the wrong part of the conversation. All of those kinds of things. Yep. The social norms of those environments, they were my painful lessons in that early period.
Yeah, sure. So I guess that makes it difficult talking at board level, executive level, and having those conversations, right? But I imagine it seems to work the other way. So I'm quite similar, right? I can say inappropriate things and be a little bit quirky, and but I find that helps in terms of like managing teams and talking to people and getting to know them and understand them and get to their level. And helps to build rapport and relationships and things that things that come naturally to people like you and I. The less natural things perhaps are sitting in a board meeting and telling people what their firm's not doing correctly, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, a decent number of personal challenges there. What about challenges in terms of the industry? What do you think the greatest challenges are for our industry at the
minute? Twofold. So in terms of career, the other part of this was I wasn't from the sort of London city setup. I never had any interest in it. But when I went to try and get corporate experience, like I was in the Midlands, I never thought about going to London. But then when you look for work, and again, I've just told you that the previous experiences I had where it didn't work out.
Yeah.
I reluctantly became a Londoner to go there and find work. There's this debate that's been going on for the last 40 years of like, we have to find a way to find people careers outside of the southeast, right? But anyway, I fell into that bubble of, well, let's go to the southeast. So that was the first challenge of getting that, the frog sitting in the well mindset of, I don't want change. It was hard for me as a more mature grown-up who had a partner, who had a young family, whatever, to decide it's time for move, because I have to move for career. Like, I didn't want to leave my family, I didn't want to leave my friends, all the kind of stability setup that I had. That was the first challenge from a career point of view. Once you get into the career, to your question, what are the challenges? Once you start doing that, it's relationship, it's trust, it's rapport, it's confidence, it's accountability, it's likability, it's all of that soft stuff mixed with, do you have the right knowledge? Then when you go for interviews, it's what experience do you have to date? Where have you worked? What brands have you worked for? Yeah. All of that matters for some reason when you're face to face in an interview scenario of, I don't know whether you want to be in private wealth or whether you want to be in a Swiss private bank or whatever you might want to be. When they meet you, the first 3 or 4 seconds of, do you fit or do you not fit? And you can have whatever experience you've had to date, but you only have what you have. So it was good enough to get your CV seen, screened, to get in front of people, but it's not quite what we're looking for. We already know who we like, but we needed 4 other CVs to make it look like a fair process. So there's that challenge. And then, it's whether the person sitting opposite you or a panel sitting opposite you, they can look beyond their own biases, their cognitive bias of if somebody walks in, I don't like the look of you in the first minute or 10 seconds. There's that issue. So there's those issues. And then there's obviously the knowledge ones as well of, do you have the experience? Do you have the know-how? What painful things have you been through with a regulator, for example? What did you learn from it? How did you improve your processes, governance controls, etc., etc., etc.?
Yeah, and I suppose, again, when you get into that interview situation, it's all there on paper, right? But then being able to articulate it and say, this is who I am, versus what's written on paper, and therefore I'm what you need, and saying, look at me, I'm great, to a bunch of people that don't know it's quite a challenge, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you this example. Where I work today, my happy place, as I call it, I work with a great MD, and he's, again, over time, you build rapport, you build a union, brotherhood, whatever you want to call it. He's one of my besties. We've spent pretty much the last 5.5 years together daily, and in that time you build that bond. Now, when he met me, I still recall, and we still laugh about it. We laugh about it now, obviously, because it's worked out well. When he initially interviewed me, his very pointed, direct question, how do you stay on top of things, and how do you deal with all the plethora of regulatory noise and change? And I think my answer was, you don't, and you hope for the best, and you Google, and you call a friend. And I wasn't being flippant, I was being genuine. I have a wide network of people that I talk to. I have friends who've got great experience. I have a community of compliance nerds that I go to and say, hey guys, on a given day we're all Yoda. I know something you don't know, you know something I don't know. Let's knowledge share and help each other be successful. Allegedly, that's the wrong answer for an interview, so don't say that in an interview if anyone. Tell them that you are a human AI and you know everything. Now, that put him off me, because he was like, this guy's way too laid back and laissez-faire and calm and chill. Now, I didn't know the issues that his business were going through at the time, but his immediate reaction was, this is not the guy I'm looking for. This is not the droid. The process worked out. I got hired. We are now brothers. And it's a lesson in, you don't always know what you need. You might think you have a vision of something, but it may not necessarily be the person sitting in front of you. And the concept of a 25-year experienced versus, at the time, myself, the first time stepping up to a CCO role guy, you think you don't want that, but sometimes they're the people you do need, because they're hungry, they're motivated, they want to do well, they want to push themselves, etc., etc. So there was a great lesson there.
Yeah, sure. So throughout your career then, we could move on to like mentorship and things, which I know you do a lot of yourself, but in terms of your own career, did you have your own, let's call them a Yoda figure, who helped guide you towards what you're doing now?
I did. I'm trying to think which character I'd call her. So a lady called Martine Dampier, one of my close friends, mentors. She lives in Hong Kong. I've been to visit her a couple of times thanks to the role that I have. She was my initial... what's the best way to describe this? So I believe in the concept of when you pray to the higher power, whatever you believe in, and you say, hey, help me, I'm drowning, then the higher being sends you 3 ships to stop you drowning, and then you're like, hold on, God is coming for me, you guys go, and then you drown, and then you go to the pearly gates and you say, Lord, you were supposed to come and save me and I drowned. And then allegedly the joke goes that the Lord says, who do you think sent the ships, fool? And it's that she was my ship at the time when I needed a someone to say to me. She was my manager at the time, 2010, 2011, whatever that window was. And I wanted to be a commercial lawyer at the time. And she said, you are not a commercial lawyer. You are not a T's and C's guy. You are not sitting in a cubicle guy. You're a people guy. You should be a compliance guy. And I was like, cool, what's a compliance guy? So the first time I heard the word was through Martine. The second time I heard the word was through Martine. And then she guided, directed, gave me advice in terms of what a career in compliance could look like and what compliance was. And I think the other bit of guidance, she said, you need to go and work in a bank. And I said, okay, great. Which bank? Which door do I knock on? And then imagine you're this person, you've got some legal experience, and then you're going to go knock on banks and say, hi, I'm here for compliance experience. And they're like, what experience do you have today? And they're like, none. And you're like, well, thanks for coming. Bye. So she's the spark. You know, you have the spark that turns into a flame, and the flame, you then fan the flame, and it grows and grows and grows. She was my person then. She gave me direction. I needed direction. I then took that forwards. The buzzwords, consistency, discipline. And you work towards it, and years later you're like, yay, masters of the universe, all the rest of it. Life is great. And now when I see her and we break bread together, I still remember that this is the person that the universe sent to me to help me on my journey. So I take that approach now with all the random people that I meet and connect with. I promised the universe, help me and I will help them. So I've kind of stuck to it. That's kind of where I got into it. I had a mentor start that. Now have several mentors, by the way, who teach me very valuable lessons. I seek them out. I seek their guidance. I seek their knowledge and expertise of their own journeys, and then I add it to mine. I pretend that they didn't tell me, then I pass on that knowledge to others and pretend it's all my knowledge so that I look cool. And then it's full loop. It goes round and you feel amazing, selfish in doing goodness for others, so to speak.
Absolutely, why not? So remind me, how have you been in compliance now?
So I call it 2010 onwards. So what are we now? 2014, 14 years ish.
Yeah, so I guess that's a bit similar to myself. I guess you've caught that kind of relatively lucky wave of it changing from very much sales prevention, somebody to get in the way and not be a people guy, into this much more guidance and strategic kind of position that actually does have things to tell, and you can now be this person who is much more helpful and interactive, rather than sit in your ivory tower telling the entrepreneurs they can't do everything, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the industry has changed. It's had to change. I've been lucky. Along my journey, I've met lots of. What's the thing they say? You're either a warning or an example. I've met lots of warnings, and I learned from them, and I'm like, that's not how I want to be. It's that. Really? That's how you want to do this job? No. So I try to do the opposite. You learn more from the tough experiences that you have in any career, as you know. And I think compliance is no different. You get a range of leaders, and there is a traditional historic view of how compliance people were. Nobody ever dreamed of being a compliance officer. My daughter vaguely knows what I do. My son's like, yeah, Dad. My dad taps away on a keyboard and sits on Teams all day. Like, that sounds like a great job, for example. He doesn't know what I do. They don't really care. But I think in the 21st century, we've got to be better than AI. And AI at the moment isn't good enough to have human bants, and we've got the human connectivity piece, and that's what enables us to build rapport, relationship, etc., trust. And I think that's the key. Advocacy, relationship. I'll strain to love, hippiness, and friendship, but there's a professional side to that. It's not love and hippiness, but it is being speakers of truth to power, for example. I like that phrase. I've borrowed that off a friend. But I'm using it because I'm like, I really like it. Our job is to say the thing that others in the room may not say, for example. So if there's a go, no go call, and lots of compliance people understand this, there's a project, we want to go ahead, we want to push on. Compliance tends to be the voice of pressure, maybe legal also, to be the ones to say no. And it's not no forever, it's let's pause. And maybe we don't say no. And I try to avoid no. I try to say let's talk more. But that's because I'm a talker. And I also say, tell me what our story is, and tell me why the story is a good story, and tell me why this story would be a great story for the regulator, for example. And if you are satisfied that that's a great story, let's move forwards. And I think that's where compliance now comes in. How do we help sell a great story? Especially in the context of consumer duty, doing the right thing, good outcomes, etc., which is where regulation's moving. So I think talking, communicating is the key.
Yeah, agreed. I think similar, I suppose, in some ways, light bulb moment in my early career, I suppose. I got, again, relatively lucky in that I came into it during this whole switch over from what old sales manager used to call the grey suit brigade of the compliance program. Just turn up and say, no, can't do that, and then go away again. So, thanks, that was really helpful. But it's a chap in Humphreys, his name was quite a strong advocate of building bridges between the business and the governance and control functions, and seems to have pivoted quite a lot of his career on trying to pull these people together and make things kind of work more harmoniously rather than run against the other. Similarly, I guess it's just it kind of opened my eyes a little bit in terms of what the role should be there for, rather than what it was historically there for. Great. There we go. Bit of backstory on me. It's not about me today. Sorry, I'll shut up.
Pray tell us more.
We'll move on. So, leadership-wise, so obviously as a chief compliance officer, you're essentially the master Jedi, shall we say, of the compliance department. So, what would you say are the philosophies that guide your leadership?
I did a seminar, I don't know, 3 days ago, last week, on. I didn't do the emotional intelligence bit. Somebody else far smarter than I did. And when I saw the title that there were two of us, I was like, oh man, I haven't prepared that bit. But the linkage between EQ, as they call it,
Yeah.
and psychological safety. So we did a great tandem chat last week on these topics. And I think they are the key ingredients. Like, as a leader, you've got to have a whole bunch of EQ. And if you go on LinkedIn, there's a whole bunch of stuff and, storyboards and things that you can copy, paste, download. I've got a plethora of them and I try to live by them. And I really think about trust as the foundation. So when I talk to people, and I know I am quirky, I talk about love and trust. I know it's a bit quirky and it's a bit hippie. It's, in a HR compliant way. I have to be careful about, love in the right way in the 21st century. It's caring love. It's not stalker love. You give people trust. You start with trust. I like to say to people, you don't have to earn my trust. I will give you my trust. I will give you my confidence. I will give you my love. They are the bedrock. They are my foundations. Now it is up to you as whoever I'm working with to keep it, enhance it, develop it, strengthen it, etc., etc. Because everybody has expertise, everybody's got experience, everybody's got great CVs. They've done all the things to get through the door. So now prove it. So let's start with it and let's work with a foundation of goodness, whatever you want to label that as. I call it trust. In my chat the other day, we were talking about how psychological safety, for example, is way more than trust. It's all the other stuff. It's being vulnerable. It's being authentic. It's saying, hey, I make mistakes. You're allowed to make mistakes. Let's have an environment where it's safe for all of us to get it wrong. Yeah. But let's not get it wrong too often, because that's when, especially in compliance, what do you mean compliance got it wrong? That's the wrong conversation. We don't want to have that too often. And again, we've got to think about the scale of the decisions, what we're going to do, what we're building, if it's a product launch, if it's something the FCA may not like as my sort of primary regulator. We can't get those things wrong. Nobody has a sense of humor for us to get those things wrong. But day to day, if we say, hey, how does, PRIPS regulation or UCITS or whatever, or MiFID or whatever it might be, how does that apply? Or ESG, which is the big buzzword, topic right now. How do these things come into our domain and how do they apply to our business? In our initial research, whatever, we might fall down a rabbit hole that took us in a different direction. Doesn't matter. It's great for an intellectual discussion. For example, cyber resilience is another one right now that we're talking about. We are allowed to be human and not be perfect. There's no such thing as perfection. So I operate on that basis. You don't have to be perfect. Just more often than not, give me a 7 out of 10, and I'm going to use a football phrase, a Gary Neville 7 out of 10 every week person, consistent, stable, and every now and again, rock me a 9, get that cross in from the right wing, somebody headers the ball, in you go. But it's that boring stability piece, which I really need, that 7 out of 10 every week, that. And that'll be the bedrock of everything. And excellence can be added on top. And one of my leaders, one of my previous mentors, current mentors actually, she taught me the phrase, perfection is the enemy of good enough. So let's operate on that basis. We don't need to be perfect. Good enough is good enough for the 15 things a week we got to do. Yeah. Let's get to that good enough level. Let's cross-share. Let's discuss. Let's see if we've covered 85% of the bases, which is still a pretty good grade, by A-level standards or, degree standards. If I'm getting 80%, I'm doing all right. So, I work from that basis, generally.
And for the rest, how do we learn from it and make sure we don't do it again, right?
Yeah. Let's talk about it. What did we get wrong? Why? Let's do it better. Remember for next time, etc., etc.
Yeah. So how do you then balance that need for strict regulation with fostering a positive, engaging work environment?
So the main, I talk about the how, And for me, the how is engagement. I come back to relationship. I come back to trust. So my philosophy, as you're hearing, is the key themes. I care about culture. I care about human beings. I care about well-being. I care about psychological safety. I care about being positive. I, in my own experience and journey, have seen the dark side, so to speak, of leaders. And I've sat on the other end of that conversation where you're getting direct feedback and it's painful and it's not nice and I don't like the way I feel hearing it. And sometimes I don't understand why I'm getting that negative feedback. For example, when you're younger and somebody's telling you, they might be telling you out of a really good place, but they might also have whatever biases or whatever. They might be a bad manager. There's a lot of reading out there on it. I won't bore you with that. But, there's that issue. And I think if we give care to people, then they will care. If we create an environment where their needs are met, so these are our juniors, these are the doer people on our teams, what are your needs? And if I can enable you to live the life that you want to live, then you will give me, I believe, out of loyalty and shared human experience, all of that, hey, you made me feel good, you supported me when I was down, you will enable me to do better, and I want to do well for you. And I'll give you one example. On my wall right now, the other thing that I do with engagement is this. I have a poster that says what I can control, what I can't control. I get my children to read this daily. It's on my wall, and just above it, I have my positive self-talk sunflower picture as well. And the very first petal, it says, and I am enough. And I want my team and the people around me to feel that. We are enough. Today I'm a leader. I can control my own happiness. And if I can do that at work, then you can probably do that outside of work and all the rest of it, Sure. Bring your best, authentic, positive self to that work and the people involved in it. And, just don't be the negative energy in the room because life's too short, basically. I think that's my waffly way of saying that's how I think about regulation and getting it done.
That's a great outlook. It's and a really nice comparison to it. I like that. Thank you. So you mentioned, I'll backpedal a little bit to an answer you gave just now. So you mentioned about people having got through the door, they've had the CV, they've given you on paper what that looks like. So in terms of the actual skills and everything that's on top of that for, say, new or developing compliance people, what would you say are the key skills that someone would need to get ahead in compliance, and how can they develop them?
So this is a conversation that I've had many times with my own mentors who have run teams, big teams, small teams, whatever. So we have, over the years, built a cheat sheet. And I'm just looking at it now on my screen as I'm talking to you. And one of the things that I wrote was 2024, for example, let nothing drop. And by let nothing drop, there's so much to do. Don't let anything drop consciously, And the tips to be successful, I've got a few of them scattered around. The first thing that stands out to me is have fun. If we are having fun, we're probably going to do well. It's a topic we care about. It's a topic we're interested in. It's a topic to enable us to show off a little bit and be a peacock to our audience to say, hey, I got this. I'm the trusted person for you to come to. The business is like, yeah, that person, let's go to them. They're on Kash's team, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So there's that. You got to have fun. The other thing that I've got on my make sure you do this list to be successful is communicate, communicate, communicate. One of the worst painful lessons that I've seen as a CCO has been the lack of information flow or limited information flow, or people coming to very serious conversations where they didn't have the information. We all have leaders, we all have bosses above us. They don't ever want to come to a conversation where they didn't know, or the first time they hear about something is with 12 other people on a big senior MD call, for example. Yeah. That's not the place, because you're about to get a ping on your Teams that says, hey, let's discuss once this call's over. And that's not a, hey, let's discuss and have coffee chat. That's a, why didn't I know? Yeah, and, that flow of information conversations are never nice when you're on the wrong end of it. I've also got, just be brave, do your job. And I learned that from one of my most recent leaders. The job has to be done. So let's be brave. Let's put ourselves out there. Let's be accountable. Let's do it. Don't be shy. Don't be nervous. Be brave. Do what you have to do. And if you do it, with all the things that I've already touched on, with trust, goodness, and all of that positivity bit, your leaders will protect you. God forbid we go awry in some way, because you've earned their trust. You've built that relationship. The other thing I've put here is be accountable. Don't expect someone else to pick up things that you could or should have done. Let's not wait for the other. So, you get on the calls and people say, great, what are the actions here? And then the line goes silent, for example. And then the compliance guys are like, don't speak, don't speak, don't speak. And it's like, no, just speak. Okay, I will take it on me to do X. Do it. It doesn't matter who does it, as long as collectively it gets done. Yeah. The people that matter will hear that the people who will get it done, who they are, they will get all the praise afterwards or whatever. Collectively, well done team, we got it done. But people know who the glue people are that glue the thing together and make it happen. So these are just some of them. I'll end on this one. And this one always stood out for me. One of my leaders said, do the lonely work. So when it comes to being compliant and being successful, there are lots of tasks that just need to be done. And it goes on to say, the unglamorous tasks that no one asks you to do and that no others will ever notice. It's just the stuff. It's the glue work. It's the things that has to be done. We don't care who does it, how it done. Just do it. Just get it done in the best way possible. And I'll end finally on be curious, care, have an interest. That will make you successful.
I love that. Thank you. So outside of personal attributes, what about in terms of like educational background, certificates, things that you can go and learn?
Great question. So we talk about this a lot as a collective within my organisation, my leaders. So we're big on conferences, we're big on seminars. I'm going to give a shout out to the ICA, CISI, PIMFA. These are three groups that I do bits and bobs with. I sit on in the UK, I sit on various CCO roundtables. I do with a couple of different orgs. In fact, the reason you and I are talking is because one of my CCO connects said, hey, Chris, meet Kash. Yeah. So, it's that sharing and collaborating of ideas that helps us just be better and helps all of us collectively do more and do better. So I think that's really helpful. Industry events are very useful. The three orgs that I just touched on, they regularly do things on consumer duty, on AML, resilient cyber. You pick the topic, those organizations have got courses on those things. They're good for basic knowledge. They're really good for junior people. So when I'm mentoring and coaching junior folks, I say, what experience do you have? One of the things I always get folks to do, for example, is trend analysis on FCA enforcement cases. What are the themes? What are the trends? What are the things that got breached? Go and do some analysis. That'll give you the basics for a conversation in an interview, for example. So, I get them to look at the latest ones and whatever they might be and tell me what happened and tell me why. And then I also get them to do the same for, say, the Hong Kong regulator or the Singapore regulator. And there's various ones in the US also. There's always good enforcement cases out there, Germany, BaFin, for example, etc., etc. Go and see the cases, what happened, what are the issues. They're great ways to learn. And then go and meet people, go to seminars, your peers locally, internally within the firms. We spend a lot of money on training. Go and do it. Our firms also pay for memberships to so many things that gives us free access to, for example, LinkedIn Learning is a great resource that we have access to. There's thousands of courses on there. Now, I'm not saying every time you finish a certificate, please say, I have now got this certificate. That's for your own personal development, right? You don't have to share it with your social media profile or whatever. But, go and do it, learn it. It's all helpful. It all adds value.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Now, the answer to this next question may be very similar to the one that you answered just a minute ago. But so let's approach this from a slightly different angle. So if let's say you have, somebody up and coming, they're looking to come and get a job with your firm, in your team, what ideally are the sort of attributes that you would like them to show you that would make them attractive to you as a prospect?
Great question. So I have this chat with my MD in London regularly, and we ponder on what kind of skills we're looking for. the two H's that I like, and they sit in my mind a lot. The first one's humility. And you can throw in grace and all of that. Just, I don't know, I'm in need, I need a start, help me, all of that stuff, all the humility stuff.
Yeah.
And then there's hunger. And that's the drive, determination, focus, etc., etc. If you can showcase those, the two H's, you're in a great starting point. Certainly for what I look for, and I hope what my MD leader in London looks for. We're big on, just goodness,
Yeah.
all of that good stuff. The educational stuff helps. Learning a little bit about the firm really helps. Like we've been in interviews where people have no idea what the firm does, for example. That's never a good start. We live in an age of information, like it's just dripping everywhere. Just go and Google, I mean, there are other search engines available, FYI, but whatever you choose to use, just go and look, go and check. There's a lot of information. Firms spend a lot of money from a marketing and educational lens to put information out about themselves. Reporting, annual reporting, performance reporting, whatever. Go and find out. Go and read the values page. What's our values, for example, things like that. And I think that fits into the hunger and humility bit.
Yeah, I agree.
If you do that, it's a great start.
Yeah, absolutely. Similarly, so obviously, I've sat on your side of the fence for a long time previously, and I think you get to a position where you think, I can train people to do the job. Right, that bit is fairly simple. You can train somebody how to do monitoring. You can train somebody how to do various aspects of the job. You can't train them to have humility or hunger or drive or ambition or a genuine interest in the job or the company. You just can't teach that stuff, right?
That I agree, totally agree.
Excellent, thank you for that. So fast forwarding into the future a bit, what would you see as being the next kind of big challenge or the next innovation in financial services and compliance?
So it's the one that comes up in every conference I go to now. It's AI.
Yeah, agreed.
I'm having more and more conversations about Skynet and the Terminator, like all the movies that you and I grew up on. Destroy the chip. Hopefully the nukes are all analog. They're not linked to, I don't know, NVIDIA, semiconductor, microchips, whatever. We're just a more and more connected world, right? So we're heading in that direction. And where you look at ChatGPT version, whatever it was, 3, and that is 4.5 and 5 coming. And I follow a lot of online podcasts, in fact, that talk about all of the information that was ever put out on the internet has already been fed into some of these models, which scares the crap out of me, by the way.
That's huge, isn't it?
Right, and so now they're going to, Facebook Meta, whatever it's called nowadays, and Twitter and everything else, and they're now feeding in all this other stuff because they've run out. And as humans add more, whether they're photographs or whatever, it's all slowly, as much as they can get legally, hopefully, in a controlled data governance way, they're feeding all this stuff in. And it's fascinating. I am starting to play around with some of this stuff. I read a report the other day that at least 50-60% of, I don't think it was compliance officers, but professionals are now using in some way, informally, an AI to do something, whether it's make a presentation or give a list of something. When I first played around with AI, my first thing was, hey, write me a poem, and I was fascinated. Whereas bad people said, hey, show me how to hack a bank. And I'm like, man, why didn't I think of that? I thought about poetry. Like, it's ridiculous. I wanted to see what kind of poems it could write or what kind of short stories it could write, which again goes back to I thought I was a writer and a storyteller. Yeah. So I'm fascinated by that. I'm very excited by it. I'm a little bit nervous, again, because of the movies we watched as kids. It's a world that I think it's going to revolutionize everything massively. There are lots of noises around, will I lose my job? I think we've got to get better at what we do as humans and leverage the best of what an AI might be able to do to support us do our jobs better, more effective, etc., etc. So lots of the things that I talked about earlier about what do humans bring to the table are the best of humanity, plus a bit of AI assistant. Like I talk about it being almost like, a junior lawyer that gives me a first draft of something, whatever it might be that I'm searching for, to then help me get my first bit of words on a page, and then I can refine it. And I think that's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just how that world evolves over the next 5 years, I'm fascinated to see how the next generation of compliance officers coming in, they're going to be compliance officers in brackets, AI engineers, close bracket. It's that. There's going to be that coming together.
It presents a whole new list of risks, right?
Right. How do you use it? Who controls it?
Yeah.
George Orwell, who's watching the watcher, who's watching the watcher's watcher, etc., etc.
Yeah. And it's only as good as what you feed into it too, right?
Right.
It's not, Okay, so it's artificially intelligent, but it still needs somebody to tell it what it needs to do.
Right.
Yeah, and if it makes you feel any better, my first interaction with ChatGPT was to get it to write a toilet humour-based story for my children for bedtime. So,
Well played. Well played. So there you go. We're aligned.
Yeah, they like me to. They have tons and tons of books, but their favourite is when we just make them up on the spot, right? So
amazing. Well played.
There we go. So, well, I mean, to finish this off, I guess perhaps if you've got any other, advice or guidance or anything else that we haven't discussed already, that might be useful to people starting out a career in compliance.
I would say keep hope, keep faith, keep diligent, keep focused, try, fail, try again, fail, try again, until you succeed. And then once you succeed, keep trying, and then help. Yeah. Become the ship for the drowning person, and lift them out, dry them off, give them a towel, give them a hot cup of tea, help them to then be what you never had. It's that. I think that's the way I'd leave it. Like, I tell everybody that I coach, I'll end on this basically. I'll help you, and lots of people in the industry who know me know this about me. I don't want anything in return from you.
Yeah.
It's that quote, like, help the ones that can't do anything for you. Because then you know that you're doing it for you, probably ego, whatever. But my deal with everyone is this. Once I help you, when you're ready, help one person. So that's my thing.
That's really nice. Thank you. That's a really great way to end it. Well, thank you so much, obviously, for sharing your journey with us today. It's been brilliant, and I'm sure that there are plenty of listeners out there that would find all of that really useful, and hopefully in some places humorous too. That's great. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you for your time.
I appreciate it. So that's it for today's episode. Thanks very much for listening. The future of SMF is brought to you by STJ Consultancy Solutions, your trusted partner in financial services consultancy and recruitment. So whether you're a business seeking strategic guidance or a talented professional aiming to advance your career, STJ is here to guide you every step of the way. If you'd like to discuss how we can support you, then please do reach out at info@stjconsultancysolutions.co.uk or by sending me a message on LinkedIn. If you find today's conversation valuable, please do me a favour and share it with your network. You can also subscribe, rate and leave a review to spread the word. I'd really appreciate it. Again, that's it for today, so we'll see you in the next episode, coming soon.